Welcome to our deep dive on how national rhetoric affects everyday lives. First, we will frame why contempt from high-profile leaders is not just a disagreement, but a societal shock. Next, we will examine how language draws boundaries and pressures people to choose sides. Then, we will transition into practical, nonpartisan steps any community can take to stay safe, resilient, and engaged. Finally, we will close with key takeaways, a summary, and a couple of quizzes to reinforce learning. To begin, let's establish the context. When a prominent leader directs contempt toward a large minority or immigrant community, the effects cascade quickly beyond policy debates. This rhetoric can cause fear, anger, and disorientation for those already managing issues of belonging and integration. Moreover, it can shift public discourse, alter perceptions of social acceptance, and even pave the way for discriminatory policies. Consequently, it is essential to analyze the situation immediately and prepare a constructive response. Moving forward, here is our roadmap. First, we will unpack the shockwaves produced by contemptuous rhetoric. Second, we will illustrate how boundary-setting language forces polarization. Third, we will analyze media dynamics and the risk of normalization. Fourth, we will outline a resilience playbook with nonpartisan steps for any community. Fifth, we will focus on fact-based storytelling to counter stereotypes. Sixth, we will address safety and well-being. Lastly, we will reinforce learning with quizzes, key takeaways, and a concise summary. Now let's examine how words become shockwaves. When contempt is directed at an identifiable group, it acts as a signal that social acceptance might be changing. For individuals, this can shift daily routines, public interactions, and perceptions of safety. For communities, it triggers a mix of fear and resolve, while also prompting questions about representation and rights. Moreover, public perception can shift rapidly, influencing what people consider acceptable in conversation, policy, and behavior. Therefore, a timely, organized response becomes critical. Next, observe how boundary-setting rhetoric operates. First, a leader issues a contemptuous statement. Then the media cycle amplifies it, often with simplified framing. As the public responds and shares content, division can intensify because nuance is replaced with simple binaries. This pressures targeted communities and their allies to react quickly. Over time, repeated exposure risks normalizing divisive language, which can erode social cohesion and make harsher policies more politically feasible. Quick knowledge check. The question is, what is the greatest long-term risk of normalizing divisive political language? Option A, more energetic debates with no policy impact. Option B, increased social cohesion through shared values. Option C, erosion of social cohesion and easier adoption of discriminatory policies. Option D, less media coverage overall. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is C. When divisive language becomes routine, people become less sensitive to its harms. As a result, exclusionary proposals can be introduced and advanced with less resistance, making discriminatory policies more likely. Continuing on, let's build a practical media literacy toolkit. First, distinguish straight reporting from opinion shows, commentary, or fundraising appeals. Second, review primary sources and verify data before sharing. Third, monitor your emotional response, because many messages are designed to provoke anger for engagement. Fourth, consult reputable fact-checkers and note when outlets issue corrections. Finally, diversify your information sources to avoid echo chambers and maintain a well-rounded view. Moving on, here are general, nonpartisan steps any community can take. First, map the moment by documenting what was said, where, and how it is affecting people locally. Second, coordinate trusted spokespeople and align on a clear, factual narrative. Third, expand broad civic engagement. This can include voter registration, education about representation, and issue-based briefings. Fourth, prepare rapid response teams for media interactions, de-escalation practices, and legal observation when appropriate. Fifth, build alliances spanning faith organizations, businesses, labor groups, youth coalitions, and neighborhood associations. Finally, track progress using basic indicators like event attendance, earned media, and documented corrections of misinformation. In this flowchart, We begin with detection of an incendiary remark. Immediately, the process calls for fact verification to avoid amplifying misinformation. Next, a risk assessment examines safety, legal, and reputational factors. If the risk is high, the pathway directs toward contacting appropriate authorities and activating community safety networks. If the risk is medium, the plan emphasizes public statements and community briefings. If low, the focus is on monitoring and myth-busting content. Each path converges on ally engagement and a public outreach plan. Finally, impact is measured, feedback is incorporated, and protocols are updated to improve future responses. To support a fact-forward narrative, it is essential to document contributions across multiple areas. For the economy, gather employment figures, tax data, and small business indicators. In education, track graduation rates, scholarships, and mentorship programs. For civic participation, quantify volunteer hours, town hall attendance, and advisory roles. Regarding public safety, record cooperative programs and training sessions. In culture and arts, document festivals, exhibitions, and audience counts. Finally, for entrepreneurship, track new firms, patents, and accelerator participation. These metrics help counter stereotypes with verifiable evidence. Next, focus on storytelling that prioritizes accuracy. Start with verified facts, and then incorporate personal stories that illustrate real-world impact. Use a consistent structure. Define the problem, present the evidence, show the human impact, propose solutions, and invite participation. Maintain a living, frequently asked questions document to address recurring myths. Consider a framing along the lines of, here is what changed, here is what the data indicates, and here is how neighbors are collaborating to improve outcomes. Keep the tone respectful to avoid replicating the contempt you are responding to. Here we contrast divisive discourse with constructive discourse. On the divisive side, the goal is to draw boundaries and punish an outgroup, typically using insults, stereotypes, and fear appeals. This often produces polarization, stigma, and reactionary policies while erasing nuance. Conversely, constructive discourse aims to solve problems and expand belonging. It relies on facts, listening, and shared goals, which can lead to cohesion, evidence-informed policy, and improved safety. Importantly, nuance is fostered rather than dismissed. As we address safety and well-being, begin by verifying facts and evaluating risks. Then, coordinate designated spokespeople and create consistent statements and FAQs. Over the next 1 to 3 days, brief allies and institutions, host listening sessions, and keep communication calm and precise. Throughout, prioritize de-escalation, provide mental health and legal aid resources, and document incidents carefully. Additionally, set clear boundaries for handling online harassment, use platform reporting tools, and archive relevant materials responsibly. Here's another quick question. Which action most directly counters stereotypes with durable credibility? Option A is a viral meme. Option B is a fact-checked report plus lived experience stories. Option C is an angry thread with personal insults. Option D is a vague statement about unity with no data. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. Combining a fact-checked report with lived experience stories provides both credibility and emotional resonance. This blend is more likely to shift perceptions than memes, insults, or vague unity statements. Before we proceed to the final takeaways, please note this important disclaimer. This content is designed for educational purposes and general audiences. It does not offer legal, medical, or individualized strategic advice. The approach is nonpartisan and principles-based, applicable in varied contexts. In the event of emergencies or threats, contact appropriate local authorities immediately. Additionally, always consider local laws and consult credible professional guidance when necessary. To consolidate learning, here are the key takeaways. First, contempt from national figures constitutes a social shock rather than typical disagreements. Second, the core risk is normalization, which must be named and analyzed. Third, media literacy protects attention and reduces manipulation. Fourth, resilience is a coordinated effort that relies on evidence and broad alliances. Finally, Combining facts with lived experience stories offers the most credible path to narrative change. As we wrap up, here are concise next steps. First, apply the media toolkit by diversifying sources and verifying claims before sharing. Second, document contributions with simple metrics that can be easily communicated. Third, coordinate a respectful narrative and maintain a living FAQ to handle recurring questions. Fourth, invest in relationships across institutions and neighborhoods to broaden belonging. Finally, measure your efforts, review the results, and refine your approach using feedback loops. Thank you for spending time learning about the shockwaves of political contempt and how communities can respond constructively. As a creative send-off, imagine turning outrage into organized wisdom. If this video was useful, please like it, share it with someone who could benefit, and subscribe for more evidence-based content. Finally, tell us in the comments how your community builds resilience and what topics you want us to tackle next.